All right. Thanks everybody for joining us today. I'm super excited to host another Twitter Spaces with you all. And today I'm joined by a really awesome organization called SURREAL. If you aren't familiar with them from the links we've shared of their work or from hanging out in our Discord, they're a team that builds a virtual world platform and where the worlds have been built, where worlds have been built and events have been hosted for major brands and Web3 projects, and they just have a really cool portfolio of work they've done and a history of building some awesome things. A lot of their latest work sits at this cool intersection of kind of the metaverse, virtual world, and now Web3. Seriously, they have a legit impressive portfolio of projects. We'll talk later in the discussion about things like the Mempo NFT and their launch of the Mempoverse. They also have some really interesting kind of real world meets virtual world. Their work on the Braves Truist Park for MLB opening day is really interesting and something we might touch on, and definitely worth a look on their website about that project. And then underneath it all, they've been building out their own platform to enable this technology to sort of scale to a lot more projects and a lot more worlds, and bringing these rich virtual experiences to a lot of different use cases. So I'm really interested to talk about all of this with them and unpack both the sort of the ecosystem and what's happening, their vision in it all, and the technology they're building. Today, I'm joined by Nick, Mike, Tarang, and Josh, and I'm really excited to hear what they think of the virtual world NFT game collision course that we're all on. Cool. So welcome, guys. I think, yeah, cool. So I think the nicest place to always start these is most people in the audience are coming in blind, learning about what you're building. So maybe a bit of audience calibration again, just to let us know. Who is SURREAL and where did it come from?
So first up, I'm one of the co-founders and the CEO of SURREAL. Nick, who's on the call as well, is one of my co-founding partners. Our kind of genesis story, if you will, was born out of COVID. So both Nick and I come from another agency where we've built for the last 30 plus years. Our company has built out real world, like IRL experiences for brands. So this is conferences, events, trade shows, brand activations. So everything from CES to South by Southwest, we work with major Fortune 500 brands on creating real life activations. And, that industry for many years has kind of longed for a component that would be like a complement to real world, real life. But it was something that we felt like needed to be photorealistic. It needed to be accessible. It needed to be built on gaming engines so that you could get a fully networked multiplayer. And so when COVID struck, I guess we thought, well, shit, pixel streaming's here. Unreal Engine is a kick-ass tool. We used both. We knew what we wanted to build, and we started prototyping. And so early in 2020, we started building out the platform, what would become the platform known as SURREAL. And we got to market in the fall of 2020. And since then, have had the good fortune of building some pretty amazing partnerships with Epic Games, Unreal Engine, AWS, and a few other pretty stellar brands that have come on to help us kind of refine what we do. But the ethos is that, we're not trying to recreate what you can do in real life. We're trying to complement or augment what you can do in real life by creating these immersive worlds that allow you to kind of connect with people in a way that is social first, really puts the brand and the image or the experience that you're trying to build in the richest, most immersive context that we can provide in a metaverse like experience. So yeah, it's been a fun 2.5-year ride.
And it's like one of my favorite origin stories, that idea of building the real world spaces and then hitting this, this friction and what was happening in the real world, and then it moving into these virtual spaces. It's so cool. I wonder, like, how much does your learning from that previous work guide the experiences you build? Because I feel like building real world installations and experiences is so much about the UX already. It's just a totally different UX. Like, how much do you think about that or talk about it?
Yeah, I mean, and Nick jump in, but I mean, when you're thinking about like real world experiences, they're visceral, right? They're temporal, meaning they're a moment in time. They are bound by physics and time, and so and oftentimes budget, right? I mean, and when you need all these things to be able to create context architecturally. You need to have a good sense of what it means to be able to position a brand or an image, in a way that's going to stick. So all these things really help to shape and inform how we do it. But, as Mike and Nick and Terrain can, kind of express is what makes the metaverse great is that we're free from all of those kind of limitations. So we use everything to kind of inform and shape how we build as a starting block.
Yeah. I watched the YouTube series that you started, episode 1 of Into the Verse, which I highly recommend people go check out. It's like super well done, such a high production quality, and then really engaging, like packs a lot of really great content in 10 minutes. But your teammate Adam is talking to Charlie Fink, journalist, writer in the space. And he says, when we talk about metaverse, we're right now we're talking about VR. And so I thought this would be a really good place to just put some context on what we're talking about to the people listening. Do you agree with that? Like, what are we talking about when we talk about the metaverse today?
There's kind of this old school mindset where virtual reality is the metaverse, right? I mean, you talk about Ready Player Me or Ready Player One, right? It's all about virtual reality and then so there's people that are kind of still stuck in that, not realizing that the majority of the metaverses that we deal with today, and when we talk about metaverses, there's the big M metaverse, and then there's small M metaverses, right? And what we're trying to enable is those small M metaverses, and a Fortnite, a Roblox, those kind of activations. People that are doing things in there are building those small M metaverses for their brand, and we consider those metaverses, right? And so those aren't VR. And that's kind of, again, one of the big areas where Charlie and I disagree. I think, the metaverse is just going to continue and evolve, and VR will be a piece of the metaverse. There's no doubt that the immersion that you feel inside of a VR headset is much greater than just staring at a screen. But at the same time, there's not a lot of people that want to put a headset on for 8 to 12 hours a day. Yet we'll all spend that much time on our phone or our computer throughout the entire day, if not more than that already.
Yeah, for sure. All right, cool. So then I guess moving into where rubber meets the road a bit, maybe just to understand a bit better what SURREAL does, sort of the end-to-end project and technology. Could you maybe start unpacking, like pick any project that you think that you've worked on over the recent years that you think is just a good example of what you do, what you build, and what the desired outcome is for building one of these small M metaverses?
Yeah, absolutely. So it always starts obviously with a conversation, right? And one of the things that we really need to understand about the metaverse is that it's truly just another channel. It's just another marketing channel, right? It's no different than social media or something like that, right? And we always start there with clients to make sure that they understand what it is they're building and why they're building something. And we're actually starting to see a much larger uptick in people now compared to even 6 months ago that are like, okay, we see this market, we need to get into it. How do we get into it? And that's where we kind of come in, and they will tend to start talking to us, or they can even talk to other creative agencies. But it's all about, first and foremost, understanding what it is the brand wants to accomplish. Secondly, the demographic that the brand is going after. Obviously, the majority of the users in the metaverse are younger, Gen Z, millennial types. Not to exclude the Gen Xers or the Boomers that are out there that are diving into this thing head first as well. But understanding the demographic and who they're trying to target. And then from there, that's where the fun gets to start, right? We get to start creating these worlds from scratch without the limitations of physics, right? There's nothing that is going to bind you in the metaverse like the real world does. And so it can get kind of wild at times. There's been some fun ones that we've done that are a bit interesting. Some we've turned down that are a little bit in a wrong direction for us. There's some industries that are always kind of leading the charge that we tend not to go into. But they're fun nonetheless. So from there, yeah, it's really all about creating the worlds. And then this is Josh's favorite part, so I'll let him talk about it. But from there, it's on the client to start programming that space. And I'll let Josh talk about programming.
Yeah, and I just want to make sure that I think there was a question about the tech. I don't know if there was a specific question about the tech stack.
Oh, we'll get into the tech stack. This is really good. I'm super interested, in this kind of creative process of even initiating a metaverse is super fascinating.
what I'll say is that the question that comes up oftentimes is, is this metaverse thing for real? Is it going to have legs, and what is it going to take for it to become stickier, right? Because if you were to go to Decentraland right now, there's a couple sites you can track. There's probably not a ton of active use. So is this going to be a ghost town, or is this going to become a new channel where we spend more time there? And in order for us to get to that point, we have to have a core loop. And right now the metaverse doesn't have one. It's very event driven. So that is as close to a loop as we can get right now, which is to say there's a runway show, or there's a brand event, or there's a social hangout, there's an NFT drop, whatever it might be. That's the thing that is creating and closing the loop. It's just not happening with enough frequency. And so creators, brands, organizations that want to get into this space have to understand that right now is an R&D phase. Like, you got to kind of start somewhere, and that is to say, pick a platform, start building, start testing. But you got to create the core competencies internally. You got to create the channels, or at least the muscle memory and pipeline for actively programming and bringing in content on a routine basis that's going to bring people back, not a first or a second time, but day 30, day 60. It's no different than gaming. It's just it requires a commitment to core game mechanisms when you're not building a game. Like, the metaverse isn't a game. It's more like a 3D embodiment of your website, or it's to the extent that you would say like a social platform like Meta. But it's definitely not a game. So that's the hard part. That's the hardest part about all this is the labor, the time, the energy, the effort to create good content, which isn't necessarily a matter of budget, but it does have to be the right content for it to work.
That's interesting. Yeah, I had a lot of ideas. I was thinking of this conversation over the last few days, and I was thinking, what are the reasons people enter these worlds? And it's interesting you say that they're not games. I was thinking that I think there's some nuance to even what you're saying, but just like that there's overlap with games, but then the other reasons people could join them are, like you're saying, events or kind of opportunities that kind of bleeds into social and maybe collaboration and the kind of meta idea of working in these spaces. But the ones that are around, like inventing a world that people are going to come engage with, maybe re-engage with. I'm really curious about lore building and how you all have you seen, so like in Web3, there's a lot of projects, and a good portion of Web3 generally focuses on lore. And, you build this kind of background story, or you fill your world with enough real or fictional story that it solidifies the project in kind of the user's imagination. And I think we've seen this done really well outside of Web3, obviously, like games. I'm not a huge game player, but I think Red Dead Redemption was like notoriously story driven, right? Really deep story components and lore. Curious, like, have you seen like the metaverse, non-gaming metaverse that's done really amazing lore building?
Yeah, I mean, we definitely utilize a lot of gameplay mechanics and lore building. So, I mean, lore building is just part of that, the whole story behind everything. So Mempo in particular is a great project that utilizes that. They have a whole backstory and a whole city that they're slowly filling out with all of these different elements of story and purpose. And it's something we're partially involved in. It really depends on the project whether or not they utilize that aspect of gameplay, but we try to include it whenever we can and work it into a script.
Yeah, I feel like I've done so many kind of, at least VR, I wouldn't even call a lot of them metaverse, but VR cases where you just sort of are dropped into a new thing that you move around, and the lore feels like maybe you need to build it up on your own, but it doesn't seem like it's sort of injected into your head in a way that the imagination starts running. Feels like there's some cool things to do there, especially around that intersection of Web3 and the metaverse.
And I think that kind of goes back to what I was saying earlier. I mean, because we sit like at the intersection where brands and enterprise want to start moving into metaverse. So it's not always a Web3 play, it's a Web2 play, or maybe a 2.5 play. But you're talking about corporate marketing. is not synonymous with like, creating lore around a brand, but it's the lesson that needs to be learned. And the thing that they have to come up with is how do we engage in a way that's more authentic. And this is part of that. I think it's going to take time for this industry to mature where, I use the analogy all the time about, the fact that it takes, an entire industry that's been around for a long time, different contractors, city planners, architects, engineers to build a building like SoFi Stadium in LA, for example. I mean, it's a multi-billion-dollar project that takes over a year or 2 years to build, but it knows what it wants to be. It knows how to get there, and there's a process for developing something like this. Whereas, a lot of metaverse right now is kind of wild, wild west, and people might think, well, build it. If we build it, they'll come. And it's like, well, yeah, maybe once or twice, but then after that, they're not coming back. So being able to work in some of that scripting and that storytelling so that you've got a progressive, kind of roadmap for how you're going to roll content out and how you're going to continue to engage is a big part of what's needed right now, is looking beyond the launch to what does this look like 12, 18 months down the road? And are we committed to that kind of production, right? Because it's a production at the end of the day. And then I guess the last part is, this is really hard for enterprises. How do we engage community? Is there a way to get people to help us with this? And these are all like big challenges. I'd say too, bridging the gap from 2 to 3 is, we got enterprise that has money, that wants to spend, that wants to build, they want to try. They just don't know how. So how do we help them with this? And we're at the early stages of that. There's a project that's getting ready to kick off. We can't say with who, but it's a transportation company. We're really excited about it because they are engaging with this kind of storytelling narrative. It's going to be a 12-month, 16-month rollout in anticipation of a real world event that's coming next fall, where you're going to see these kind of, there'll be more than quarterly releases, or maybe like every 6 or 8 weeks, there's going to be new neighborhoods that open up. And Mempo kind of works in the same fashion in these new districts of a city that open up over time, where that story can build out through really well-designed interactions with NPCs, quests, gameplay, where then you kind of engage some of those other Web3 mechanisms where play to earn can kind of keep you invested in a project, even if there's not a token involved.
Totally. Yeah. So, all right, I want to come back obviously to the Web3 and the Mempo pieces, but I do want to talk about your technology, because I think in that like small M metaverses idea, I've heard it from a number of thinkers, that maybe there's sort of a lot of disparate metaverses and that people move across them depending on context or what they're doing or opportunities or whatever. And we see a bit of that in the building now, that could be what it looks like. And some of the technology that you're building could play a big role in that. Could we unpack a bit, like not just your technology, but building down to it? Like, what is the technology stack of one of these experiences that you're building?
It's pretty complex, so it's using several technologies.
That's job security talk.
Yeah, a little bit. So Unreal Engine is the baseline for all of the gameplay and that's our pipeline there. But it's launched on a cloud instance and sent as a stream rendered down to the client on a browser. So that involves server infrastructure. We have a backend that kind of helps manage user accounts, and we have the front end side of it, which is a React application, and with that, it has a channel into the game, and there's communication back and forth between this instance that's being streamed to the browser and the React application. So it's a pretty complex stack because it involves a lot of libraries and custom work we've done to make it all communicate properly, and that allows us to deploy on any browser, so it covers any device essentially out of the box.
So that whole stack is kind of the technology it's the SURREAL platform that you can kind of deploy that platform to lots of different metaverse use cases.
Right.
Cool.
Yeah, it's like and it's like a platform for platforms too. I mean, we don't care what the world is, we just want to help enable you to get it out there.
Yeah. Yeah. So then I know that probably gets us into Web3 a bit. So what are you starting to see are the hooks in that platform for Web3? Like either from potential client interests, or even just your own, like where are you seeing Web3 connect into that?
It connects in actually in the front end usually. The gameplay side of it, we're still working on, but for right now, we have MetaMask integration, and that happens in the web application. And from that, we can communicate with the game to determine, what NFTs you own and how that appears into the game. Next steps in the future, it'd be great to get some kind of in-game minting process so people can find items within the world and mint them directly from the game.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, so it's all about the in-game asset ownership.
Right. Yeah,
Yeah,
definitely. I think so. And being able to take that from metaverse to metaverse and have it evolve with you too.
Yeah, that interoperable, composable assets. Yeah.
Right now in the metaverse is that interoperability piece, and we see Web3 kind of playing a role in helping create the bridges, if you will, between these different areas, right? There's also a lot of other work that has to go into that from kind of unified asset creation and standard formats and things like that. But ultimately, we don't want to be the Facebook of the metaverse, and we don't want there to be a Facebook of the metaverse. And so with that, you need to be able to take your Mempo assets and go to Decentraland with them. And what does that look like, right? And then be able to go into the sandbox and move around. And again, Web3 and in the way that we're looking at it is going to help create that bridge for us.
Yeah, it's that whole ownership economy. And well, I'm curious. I think Nick, you and I have had some like side conversation about who cares about owning digital assets, and obviously there's a lot of people that cares about owning that now care about owning digital assets. There's a whole lot of people that don't quite understand it yet, and maybe won't care. I'm not sure. But what kinds of assets are you all imagining? What are you seeing like spring into these worlds that are interesting to either bring to multiple worlds, or just interesting to an end user to have the concept of ownership connected to?
Well, I'm a gamer, so it came out of that. Like when I was younger, you could achieve anything within these games, but the problem is as soon as you're done with it, it's gone. Like you have no history of that item anymore. So if I could own an NFT of that item and take it into a metaverse and have that nostalgic association to it, I think it'd be great.
Most of our work is being done on Ethereum as well as Polygon. So Mempoverse itself, the NFTs reside on Ethereum. So, checking whether these NFTs are being owned by the users, that is being checked on Ethereum. And for the avatar minting that we are going to integrate along Tableland, we are trying to do that on Polygon, because we believe that Polygon has a greater scalability, as well as it is the gas fees are cheaper than Ethereum. But yeah, of course, like with the Ethereum 2.0 merge, these things are going to be taken care of. So in the future, we do want to also include Ethereum into the picture, because of course it is a little bit more well known than you can say Polygon. So yeah, this is like something that we are looking forward.
Yeah, we've been thinking about that a lot too, obviously. And one interesting idea is moving the transactions to different chains depending on what they're doing, right? So people like to collect valuable and important assets on a valuable and important asset chain like Ethereum, but maybe they want to be running, low value, high throughput transactions on a cheaper chain. Also, Brian, who you met this morning, and has been running these kind of community opportunities to create data on Tableland as an experiment. And he recently moved to Polygon mainnet, and we were like, how much is that going to cost if we just paid for everybody to do it? And it was like, oh, pennies. Like, we'll just pay the pennies. Like, it becomes less of a cost issue to have the creator of a metaverse just front the transaction costs for their users to remove friction, because it gets so cheap. So makes a lot of sense.
And ultimately getting into purchasing a car in the metaverse, what does that look like, right? There's a lot of people kind of exploring real estate in the metaverse and kind of transitioning deeds and stuff like that into NFTs, right? That can be transferred and things like that. And there's really nothing stopping us from doing the same thing in the automotive industry, right? I mean, your deed, your it's not a deed for a car, but your title, yeah, is held, right, as an NFT, and it can be paper as well. There's nothing stopping that, but be held as an NFT, and a financer can hold that NFT and then transfer it to you once you paid off your car, and then give you the ability to sell that, right? And so it's those kind of things too that we see kind of playing a major role in these metaverses as they continue to get built out.
Yeah, so more important, or sort of like more valuable and more diverse assets start migrating in one way or another to the virtual world.
Well, and the biggest idea that we have, and it's really the biggest problem that we have. So I'm looking for a solution for anybody who's got one. Is this idea that the scarcest, utility that we have in the metaverse right now for SURREAL, because we are streamed, is computing power. Like we need GPUs. And so if there is a way to create, some sort of a block token on land ownership in a metaverse where early owners, who are also high performing earners or users, if you will, I hate to say the word influencers, but where there can be a model where compute can be, truly the utility that is powering these places, because there's an extremely high cost to running a high concurrency photorealistic streamed metaverse versus something like Decentraland, which is still also expensive to run. So like having some utility around land ownership based on early access, based on performance, so that you can then kind of share compute or at least compute back securely, is a loop that I think is going to be necessary as we start thinking about these little metaverses becoming slightly larger and bigger, where you do have something that starts to look like a platform or a place where you're getting a lot of traffic.
Yeah, so unpacking that a bit more. So the way it works currently is basically if I'm in one of your experiences, there are some GPUs off on a server someplace, and they're rendering every scene for me, the full graphic of the scene, and then they're streaming full graphics or just changes of pixels, like a GIF or something. Which way is it actually? I'm not familiar.
It's an optimized stream, so it definitely it sends what is needed.
Changes. Okay, cool. Yeah, so it streams yeah, that's why they call it the pixel stream. It streams the pixel stream, and you're seeing the updates. And so the challenge here is that those GPUs are costly, hard to get time on them. But we've spoken, Nick and I have had some conversations about a couple of crypto projects that are doing this GPU as a backend service. Are any of those starting to look promising for that kind of use case, or they're not quite solving the right thing yet?
Yeah, it's like, I mean, we talked about render token, right? I mean, that's one of them that's kind of working on that solution, and the problem is still scale, and that's going to drive the price, right? There's just not enough GPUs really kind of out there in the cloud right now, and so one of the things that they're focused on is kind of getting like I've got a GPU in my computer and I sleep for 8 hours a night, so why can't somebody else use it, right? And building that network is just taking time. They've made really good headway on kind of leveraging the pre-existing cloud infrastructure, GPUs and things like that. But on the smaller, kind of leveraging individual users' GPUs, they just really haven't kind of hit that mark yet.
And then does that work with something like Unity? Is Unity flexible enough to move the rendering around like that? Like if I was actually just a user in one of these experiences and I wanted to say mine my own GPU while I'm doing my own thing, could I get the whole model in an easy way that then could do that? Or is there some innovation that needs to happen on top of that piece of the stack?
Yeah, so right now it's not necessarily set up that way, or I should say we're not set up that way. Ultimately, yeah, we'd love to get to that point where again, I could use my own GPU instead of forcing a stream. I think part of it's going to be driven by the chip makers themselves. NVIDIA's kind of made some smaller comments or kind of sideways comments in regards to they don't necessarily want to sell consumer chips anymore, because what's the point, right? I mean, if you can have them all on the cloud, again, I don't need it sitting on my computer doing nothing for 8 hours a day. So if you can just continue to build these clouds that are holding all of these, then everybody can leverage these because the streaming is just that much better. Then there's really no need to do that, right? There's no need to have it there. But in the short term, it's definitely a solution we've looked at web GPUs coming up. It's a relatively new technology. It's not streaming. It's using your hardware on your computer to render. And so we've looked at doing that and allowing the end user to choose, do I want to use my own resources or borrow somebody else's resources to do this?
Yeah. And so I guess that would, I guess that makes sort of the portability of the entire game logic or experience logic and all the assets and pieces that render the actual environment would have to then be in some sort of open network to your IPFX exploration with avatars. It sort of, maybe it grows out from there. I don't know. Is that how you're thinking?
Yeah, that is what we're kind of thinking with it. I mean, our focus is on avatar right now and the items that make up your identity, essentially. So with that, yeah, using something like IPFS, we could eventually possibly distribute the entire event through something like that and allow it to be streamed in on demand.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So maybe it's worth, what can you share about your avatar project and kind of what you're experimenting with there?
So the avatar project so far, we're using our existing avatar system that is really configurable. You're able to change almost any aspect about yourself and customize different items and things like that. So we're looking to take that actual model and mint it against a database and then have that stored in the cloud. And then from there, we could actually download it into each different event as you logged in. So you wouldn't have to have the pre-existing asset, which is a major blocker for interoperability.
Yeah. That's cool. So owning your avatar. One of the things I found pretty interesting in the surreal avatar builder was the sort of psychology experiment of trying to make it look like myself. like there's a lot of like personal image that I'm like, okay, do I really look like? So then I was thinking, if you had those,
I got a six-pack, Andy. I mean, that's actually what I look like.
Yeah. So I was wondering, when I was building one, I was wondering if it goes that direction, that I build this thing and it's ownable, it also would make it transferable. So then maybe if I really wanted one that looked like me and I didn't have the skills of crafting an avatar, there's a whole marketplace for artists and people to create those for other users, which I think is really interesting. All right, so that gets us a little bit closer into the Web3 vision that you all have. Maybe it's time to talk about Mempo, which might be one of your most your sort of the project's furthest along, already having users in it and playing with it. Yeah, what can you share a bit about the Mempo collaboration?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's an interesting one. I mean, they created this an NFT collection that was specifically Mempo's, and then they're kind of actually working a little bit backwards, in the sense that they didn't necessarily have it all figured out, but ultimately, a Mempo is, if you consider it's a ninja, right? That you can own it, and you can take it into this world. Right now, there's 3 different games that you can play to earn coins in there. They're working on one. We can't really talk about it yet. They're working on their first brand collaboration, and this is the exciting part about it is, people are going to get excited. They are going to play. Cloud gaming is going to be big. It's already, Fortnite's already cloud gaming. You can access it there. Stadia's been around for a while. They never had a huge success, but it's starting to grow some. But ultimately, the idea is creating a community, and I look at it like a Discord server, right? So you're part of a Discord server, and inside of that server are all these different rooms, right? And right now, those are all represented by text chat and avatar, emoticons and things like that. Why, right? I mean, why not open those up so all those rooms are actually people and they're populated by people, and you go into that room and you see everybody that's currently active in that room. You can talk to them, you can interact with them, you can all of a sudden play games, right? I mean, you see it on Twitter or on Discord channels all the time, where the battle royale, right, where it's just a random bot selecting people and killing people off, and then the winner wins, right? Well, let's do that in real life. We don't need a bot to do that. Let's throw a battle royale together. The top man standing wins, right? And nothing's to say that, you know, some advertising can't be placed inside of that world, right? I mean, see the things that Fortnite has done with the collaborations with, you know, it's huge right now. I think if anybody's been following Fortnite, their recent release of Dragon Ball Z, right, is huge. And so, you know, you can play with your friends as a Dragon Ball Z character. You can go in as John Cena. You can play as Darth Vader, right? So all these mixing of IPs and coming together is really exciting and really fun. And that's ultimately what they're trying to create, is this, you know, photorealistic Fortnite style, but truly putting an economy behind it. So it's not necessarily all about the microtransactions like Fortnite is. It's truly about the time that you spend in the environment and that being rewarded, as opposed to, you know, the continuous, you know, microtransactions.
Rewarding engagement.
Exactly.
Essentially, yeah. Okay. So,
Yep.
all right. So, yeah, I guess backing up a second, and then maybe we can move through those pieces. So, Mempo is an NFT on Ethereum. Kind of a, if you go and look at their OpenSea, kind of a PFP where you have these ninja-styled characters, and then if people aren't familiar, Mempoverse is their release of a metaverse where they teamed up with SURREAL to build this, you know, full immersive experience where you can take your NFT in.
It was that, and I'll say that there's an interesting story about like that, like what Mempoverse was born out of, this idea of the House of Mempo. So James Street and one of his partners at Whalar Agency, which is a fairly sizable agency based in London and New York and LA. They wanted to create a gaming house called the House of Mempo, and it was going to bring in these different, you know, esports gamers, put them into a house, document the whole thing, play it out online. It was going to be a reality series of sorts. They were going to call it the House of Mempo, and they kind of set up multiple houses and pit teams against each other. So you get this real world meets kind of esports competition. And it just got too complicated with the fact that, you know, you throw a bunch of 18-year-old kids, you can't, they got to be at least 18 years old. And that gets kind of complicated. And then COVID hit. And so they pivoted and said, well, let's create a metaverse and do something similar. And so the concept of Mempoverse was born out of this idea of this esports kind of reality series, which is going to be called the House of Mempo. And so that's sort of how it's grown from there.
That's cool. So they had this vision already of this experience that they wanted to create, and then the NFT, I guess, was just sort of their lead entry into the market to get people interested, and then it gets them into this world they're building. Yeah, and so then if you go and try Mempoverse today, you can do it without one of the NFTs even, and so you kind of enter this world, and then it is sort of like a world that you can just go explore, but then you can also enter sort of the game branch of the world, right? Where so there's different kinds of missions or experiences you can have. Where does that go next?
Yes, right now there's two things that we're working on. One is a Web2 play, and I think that's kind of important in all of this, right? Is one of the things that we want to do is be inclusive of both the Web3 and the Web2 community, because there's plenty of Web2 folks that aren't sold on Web3, and there's plenty of Web3 folks that are completely done with Web2, right? And so we want to be inclusive of that large demographic on both sides. So right now we're building out a Web2 basically shop so that you can spend the coins that you're currently earning while playing these games. And ultimately, the next phase of that is to build out an NFT marketplace so that you can buy, sell, and trade the NFTs that you earn, win, and things like that, all inside of the Mempoverse. So that's the next kind of big piece of it. You know, additionally, this with some of the stuff that we're doing with Tableland is right now, you said it, it's open to anybody that can come in, and it should always be open to anybody, right? Again, you don't necessarily need to be a Web3 person or an NFT holder to get in, but that should give you access to certain areas. And so leveraging Tableland, you know, ideally we're going to use that to restrict certain areas of the space unless you have a certain achievement or you've bought the certain NFT, and allowing you to get into exclusive content, whether it's from Nike or your favorite artist or something like that. It again, just kind of creating it in that sense so that it's just another layer of engagement, right? Totally.
Yeah. So I guess I I want to get to some Tableland questions selfishly, but I'm curious more about what you're saying there in the assets being tradable in Mempo. Can you share anything about, like, how far can you share about what kind of assets people might be getting in there? Any alpha?
Yeah, it's pretty nascent still, but the Mempos are designed actually to evolve over time. So it's actually a really great connection with Tableland to be able to possibly have those NFTs evolve with you based on your gameplay. You know, your weapons get stronger and things like that, and being able to mint that back onto the NFT would be the next steps.
That's awesome. Oh, that's so cool. I've been thinking this a lot about this, like the whole play to earn movement, and how a lot of the early projects, it's always this kind of ancillary earning mechanism. Like you go and you play your NFT and you earn some emitted token that isn't your NFT, and there's this huge opportunity to make the earning happen right on the NFT you're playing. And so that's really cool to hear you're thinking in that direction. How much of that is driven by your kind of game player mindset coming into this, thinking about, you know, previous games? Like,
yeah, it's definitely part of it. I mean, like I was saying earlier, yeah, I grew up playing games, and you know, you play an MMO for years and the character becomes part of your identity in some levels. Like, so being able to have that in a permanent way that's disconnected from the game itself is definitely going to be valuable. So the actual origination though came from the Mempo side. They already were thinking in this way, but they didn't have any knowledge of Tableland yet. So making that connection has been great.
Cool. Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about Tableland. We've been talking about a number of ideas for a while. What can you share kind of, I know a lot of the things that you're testing there are early experiments, but what can you share so far about like what you're thinking about building with a project like Tableland?
So to start, like the first thing that we want to get after is again that inclusivity bit where we want to be able to deliver both Web 2 and Web 3 experiences. So kind of the first thing that we're after is really just allowing the user to choose whether they want to save their avatar data to our centralized database or mint their avatar data and store it in their wallet on a decentralized database. So that's really the first approach that we're taking to this, and then obviously being able to offer that out to any of our customers that come to us that want some sort of Web3 play. Most of the brands that we're talking to are interested in Web3. They don't necessarily know what to do with it yet. It's very similar to the metaverse, right? It's like they don't know how to use it or how to leverage it or how to drive engagement with it. And so they're kind of introducing enterprise size clients to Web3 in a very gentle way that's not intrusive to the end user. It's the other thing, you know, most people look at NFTs as, oh, it's you know, I should say most people with a negative connotation of Web3 look at NFTs as kind of a Ponzi scheme, right? Where you have to buy in, where these are free, right? You pay the gas fee to mint it and everything else is free. To your point, Andy, it's kind of creating a secondary economy in the sense of, as an artist, I can go in there and create avatars for people, like photorealistic avatars that look like them. We've dabbled in the idea of like, you know, soulbound tokens and things like that for these and truly kind of making them a little bit more part of your identity.
One really interesting thing to link there is what Mike was saying about in a lot of games in the past, your kind of character became a bit of your identity or a lot of your identity. And I was thinking to myself, actually, it's that. And then there was also the screen handle was such a big part of people's identity, right? And people, like somebody on my team was just chatting in Discord about a handle they remember from their youth that was always killing them, right? And so it's actually cool to think like on the soulbound side, having something like an ENS name that actually is the owner of a character. So then building out that brand or that recognition of the character with the name and the avatar of the character, and then even that is potentially transferable. So we've seen, you know, early glimpses of like pseudonymous identities in Web3 being built up and a brand being built around them and then potentially being sold to totally new people before they're doxxed. So like and I think there's some pretty interesting cases where that may have happened. I don't know if any of them have been confirmed, but I love that idea, and that there's this like totally different way to build up personal brand in this space. So something very cool there.
We have another project going with another Web3 tool. It's called Variant, Variant.io, where this is it allows creators to build and mint collections for, I mean, and these collections can be really geared towards anything, but in the sense of they're really focused on music right now. So you've got an artist that's coming out that wants to create a new card pack collection for an upcoming single, for example. That artist would be able to go in and mint from a creator set of tools, a unique card pack, set the economy based on that card pack so that you can create the tokenomics, if you will, of how that's going to play out. And then users are encouraged to kind of trade components to eventually mint their own unique image, which goes into, there's some AI stuff running in the background to help with the image generation, but also creating a new kind of organic image across the entire collection. And when we think about that project and how we can integrate it with something like Tableland, where there's a transfer, you've got a traditional kind of 2D art piece that comes out as an NFT. It's part of a larger collection, can then transfer into 3D. Because I mean, we live in the 3D space where beyond a gallery or a token to get into something because it's in my wallet, you know, how does that become more part of my identity? And with our avatar system with Tableland, for example, you know, if you've got an avatar that can develop a unique skin from a card pack collection, right, that might start as a 2D collection that can be converted to a 3D wrap. You know, we want to be able to explore ways where now you're looping in, you know, these outside products or projects where creators are being compensated for their projects. The owners of those collections then can begin to show up in different metaverse experiences, not just with a gallery, you know, sort of token, but something that might actually be informed by their avatar, their playable NFT, or by another playable, you know, asset that they own. In this case, like we've got some automotive clients that are looking at this same kind of connection with this project I'm mentioning, where a custom wrap or progressive built-in evolution to a racing game where, you know, fenders and performance kind of suspension systems can become, you know, kind of can grow with you over play. There's that traditional kind of 2D project now coming into a 3D space where that identity goes forward with you as well. So we're looking to those types of things, you know, with a careful eye to what's the utility, where can we really extend the value in a way that builds on identity, but also unlocks, you know, what's in it for me as a user? What can I get because I have this thing and I own this thing, both in the metaverse and then to real life where, you know, it becomes part of your conference badge that gets you into the special access places as well. So that, I mean, that's where our mind's kind of eye is really focused right now, is the right projects to bring those things to life, because there's a lot of good ideas out there, but actually having the application to stand them up and test them is what we're interested in. And so we're excited about a few significant brands that would be behind something like this, and then plugging the right utilities together in a way that starts to show up in a connected metaverse experience. I mean, that to us is really exciting.
Yeah, and that gets to something I've been curious about, and you probably all have experience with it, which is like in Web3, one of the biggest values of Web3 is that composability, that like once it's out there and people own it, they themselves or other projects could build totally new things on top of it that give it new values, new application. But I feel like a lot of like older brands are not comfortable with that ever. Like that idea of we'll build this thing and then other people will build stuff on top of it that we can't control. Have you been having those discussions, or has that not come up yet?
It kind of comes back to like the, you know, he who publishes it owns it, right? Kind of mentality. It's an old school way of thinking about it. I don't say it's a problem, but it's certainly a reality that we see on the brand side. But I think what everybody wants to see is some of these ideas of practice and purpose, because yeah, that's what we like about the Variant project, for example, because it's like you can teach a brand or an agency, for example, how to engage in this space by showing them, like, traditionally marketing is just an expense, and then eventually qualitatively it comes back to you in the form of brand lift or, sales eventually. But this is actually an opportunity to create an economy for your marketing that pays not only for itself, but makes money quantitatively, can make money for you if it's successful. So it creates a value loop, in and of itself. And that's, I think, the bigger challenge is just crossing that chasm to say, how do we do this, right? And for so many people, it's show me, don't tell me. And so I think that's our challenge collectively, is to have good use cases that are, that kind of prove out the efficacy of the model. Say, here, let me show you. You can create your own economy based on what you want to spend, and we'll get you back to your break-even point. If that's the goal, break-even, marketing should just pay for itself. But now you can prove that out, right? So these are like the things that we see more often that are the conversations that need to continue to happen. And we just need more use cases to show how it works.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, just to make a big leap there, back to what Nick was saying about car titles, we've never seen before a case where a car got secondary fees for a car after it's left the lot. But if that sort of world exists, you can start seeing a greater incentive on the creator, the car maker, to allow greater longevity in their cars, through greater secondary, part replacements and greater services, because they're actually directly incentivized to build that sort of ecosystem. And that's pretty interesting. I don't think cars is necessarily the first people that are going to figure that out, but you can start seeing that, it just changes the model, and it actually allows for something different to be built. And once brands figure that out, I think they can start experimenting and doing some cool stuff.
We're close to some major sports leagues and doing projects, obviously the Braves one in Major League Baseball, but that is it's built in, it's there. It's such a great opportunity. You just got to make the leap. We're talking about a leap. I mean, it's just the players win, the fans win, new fans come on board. We're doing baseball things that are not traditional baseball, kind of games. Where that kind of built-in evolution and value loop, if you will, supports, again, more of an economy, that is, I think it's a win-win for everybody. We just need to continue to kind of put these foundational building blocks in place to show how it works. But there's a real there.
Yeah, and once a few of them are successful, I think that a lot of other projects will come running to try to do the same. And so, yeah, I think we're close on that. And I got to be mindful of time. I'm sure I'm going to keep some of you from your meetings here that follow, but I guess just to wrap it up, and I think that's sort of a great ending thought. But do you all have any interesting projects in the pipeline you can share? Like what's coming next from SURREAL?
We touched on a few of them here already. There's, from a Web3 perspective, there's a couple of photorealistic metaverse platforms that are in development right now, both in their economy. Their white papers are out. I don't know if I can say the name yet or not, but we're really excited about this one. It's in partnership with another Finnish production company, and so we're really excited about that. And on the brand side, there are a number of really exciting kind of Web 2 to Web 3 projects that are in transition. I can't say the names because they're all protected our NDA. Sports, transportation, automotive. There's a Polygon project right now with one of their studios for a major e-retailer that we're really excited about how that's coming in. And Mike and Tarang are working on some of the building blocks for some of the avatar identity pieces that we'll be working in. So it's great to see this, as there has been this kind of winter-like effect in the last 3 or 4 months. I mean, our project pipeline has just it's actually tilted up. I mean, there's more interest in metaverse. There's more of a commitment to metaverse. And we're speaking from an enterprise perspective, like the Fortune 5000, we sit close with them and they're saying over the next 2, 3, 4, 5, 7 years, they're all committed to this transformation. And that's exciting for us because that's what it's going to take to get the adoption to mass, if you will. And so we're really excited about a lot of the projects we have going. I wish I could say more, but
no, it's good. I know a few of you are on our Discord, so our community can bug you for follow up if they've got any. And then sure. I guess just for folks that are interested in those projects, when they do become real, where are the best places people can follow you?
Oh, check out our Twitter, check out our Discord ish. Mike, we've been building our Discord up we have our own project that we want to get to market. I think maybe we can get some help from these guys here, but I would tell you the other one that's coming, it's just going to be cool. If you guys probably have seen it, is the Brook, which is it's out there. We don't have to speak behind NDAs on that one, which is to say the first photorealistic hip hop metaverse. The Brook is going to launch with the life and influence of Biggie Smalls. This is a project that's directly involved with the estate. Burst Live, which is a Zoan production company. William Morris Endeavors and SURREAL. William Morris Endeavors WME manages the estate of Biggie Smalls, the Legends division. And there's such a wonderful story about the way that his legacy has been protected and very thoughtfully curated and crafted over the last number of years that he's now hasn't been with us. And so this project is the first of its kind, and there's a lot of big brands, a lot of big projects that want to align to this as well. So it's still in development, but coming, we hope, in the second quarter of next year. So that's definitely going to be a fun one to keep an eye out for.
So that's the Brook.io.
The Brook.io.
And cool. And we tagged you in a bunch of Twitter comments this morning. So if people look there, they can find your handle. I think it's SURREAL_events, but definitely follow you all for updates. And yeah, we'll keep talking in Discord, and we're excited to be collaborating with you all. This has been awesome.
Thanks, Andy.
Thanks, guys.
Have a good day.